that we have been systematically dismantling our sovereignty and our control and our transparency around our food system.
So as you started down this path and like really starting to understand natural and sustainable and ethical, and all of that in the food system, like I'm sure you went down the rabbit hole. What did you learn?
Yeah, this is a big question, and it can really, as you have well put, become a bit of a rabbit hole. It's interesting. I think we've all seen the documentaries that would paint a real horror story of what is out there in terms of animal treatment, and without a doubt, that exists in its certain forms. Right. But what I really discovered, Sam, was something quite opposite in terms of the picture that was painted for me. I uncovered this kind of beautiful network of farmers that cared deeply about the animals that they were raising, and they were out to do their best to provide food to what is, really objectively a broken system. And so the individual actors within this system, while often demonized at kind of the ground level and at the production level, and don't get me wrong, that does exist, but I think we kind of highly demonize specifically in the production and consumption of meat. But really what I was, uncovering was good people incentivized by a bad system.
Right.
And that's what became really compelling to me to kind of understand when we think about our food chain is like, and really just food systems at large, right? That we have been systematically dismantling our sovereignty and our control and our transparency around our food system. And somehow we've pointed the blame at farmers or at individuals or, and we've kind of got even more dogmatic in terms of how we like to, finger point to one another in daily life. That doesn't help anything.
Totally.
But that was really kind of what I uncovered as I started to go down this road was interesting. Like it is a byproduct of a broken system that we find ourselves here sick, undernourished, and disconnected from our food.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you guys have this sort of 4-pillar system that you use at Northern Raised: natural, sustainable, ethical, local. Take us through that process and what that all looks like.
Yeah, good question. So this is really how we think about our food, and really how I encourage anybody to think about their food, right? As you're walking down the aisles of the grocery store, to start to, kind of keep these pillars in mind, right? So you nailed it. It's natural, sustainable, ethical, and local. These are questions really that we can ask ourselves. And so, the first being, is it natural? And this is one that they all have broad spectrums. But we look to find farmers and producers that are raising food and animals in the most natural, species-specific way possible, right? So wherever possible, try to emphasize your grass-fed beef, your free-range chicken, truly free-range, birds with complete outdoor access, understanding what the animals are being fed, because what the animals are being fed is what we are being fed. And we need to really think downstream in our food system from that. And so as we use that question of natural food, I don't use it in a marketing term as often it gets used, right? As right. Natural food. But it's just a way of thinking, right? And it's a way of questioning, truly what environment does your, animal or your food in general, never mind just meat products. We can, make this a much larger conversation, but, specifically to meat, how are the animals raised? And are they raised in as natural an environment as possible? Then we think about sustainability, and this is a cool one, and it's one I know is a very hot button topic, out right now as we look at different meat alternatives and people kind of thinking about, is beef, specifically red meat, truly sustainable? Are we able to do it in a sustainable way? And I have sort of a thought that the way that we're doing it today is undoubtedly broken. Right. It is undoubtedly broken, but it is not that the consumption of meat cannot be sustainable. It's that the trip to the Costco mega flat of chicken and hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of meat in a single purchase needs to come to an end. We need to move away from a system of overconsumption in order to think about sustainability. At the ground level, ruminant animals contribute to carbon sequestration. They are sustainable for this planet. It is a good way to feed people high nutrient dense food. And I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
But I think that we have really changed our thinking around what sustainability really means. And we can tie that into the last point as well. But yeah, so trying to think about sustainability in our food is a big one. Like I say, it is a hot button topic, but it's something that people should. I would encourage to do the proper research on. Right, don't necessarily take what's coming off the top of the mainstream media that is heavily fueled by large food conglomerate producers that are fighting for your dollars. And then the next one is the ethics around animal consumption, and we ask ourselves the question of, is it ethical? And this is a deeply personal question. This is not one that I pass any judgment on to anybody that has chosen a plant-based lifestyle or any other for that matter. Really, this is a call at a core level. This is a call to have a conscious connection with your food. And we need to understand that the end of life is a reality for the consumption of food of all types. And we need to understand that no food comes without, the sacrifice of life. And so when we think about the ethics, obviously you want to be, purchasing from an ethical supplier. And again, that gets back to the like horror story kind of, confined chicken coop type thing. So, avoiding factory farm meats, a big one, please, for everyone out there, think about that as you walk down the grocery aisle. But even when you are, when you have bought from the best source available to you, it's a matter of when that food hits your plate, do we take a moment of reflection and do we have some conscious connection to that food, gratitude for the life that has been taken in order to sustain and nourish us, and appreciating that sentience, I guess, in the food chain, and understanding that we are, have a massive role to play in that. And then finally, the local piece, right? And this is one that people will know well. Go to your local farmers market, right? Support a local farmer. Know truly where your food is coming from. Get to know the stories, the people behind your food. They are incredible people. They love what they do. They're passionate about getting food onto your plate. And I would just encourage everybody. That's a big part of what we've done at Northern Raised in terms of the transparency, to say, hey, here is the farmer. Here is exactly where this food is coming from. Don't take it from us. Go to them, right? We will connect you with that. And that's the passion for me, is to tell those stories. So yeah, that's really in that 4-pillar system, kind of how we think about that. And I encourage people to kind of keep that in the back of their mind as they do their weekly shopping.
Awesome. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I mean, I think there is a really big misconception around the production of meat and the sustainability, and even just things like methane claims against cattle. They're quite overblown. And I know you're familiar with Sustainable Dish. And for those listening, you can actually follow her online. And she has a really great book out called Sacred Cow. And I think there's actually a documentary now, which I haven't watched yet. But when we think about methane claims, I mean, cattle is like, or just livestock in general, is like 3.9%. It's transportation, it's electricity generation, it's the industry, it's commercial, it's residential. That takes up most of the methane claims. So, livestock really is accounting for 3.9% of all the US GHG emissions, which, we can go down the rabbit hole with this. But is this something that like you've been doing some research on too, and like you're really familiar with, or how do you feel about all that?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head in terms of the resource of it. Diane is a fantastic resource. Awesome. She obviously the book Sacred Cow and finding her on Instagram is very, very worthwhile. And she does a ton in terms of getting into the really hardcore statistics around those emissions. And yeah, you're not wrong from that statistic point of those carbon emissions primarily coming from sources within the supply chain of food.
Right.
Far more heavily and far outweighs the emissions that come from the animals themselves. What we also don't factor in is the offset calculation that happens, right? So cattle and ruminant animals, so anything with the hoof and multiple digestive systems, they are helping to sequester carbon back into the soil, and they're creating their own carbon offsets. They are neutralizing themselves.
Right.
And there are some amazing, amazing examples that people can find online of regenerative farms where you can see really intimately. They let you right into this world of, of soil health. Obviously, the king of this would be probably Zach Bush. That's an easy name to drop, to follow, but the folks like that are doing incredible work to point out what ruminant animals can do for carbon sequestration in soil, and so that factor is one of those big ones that doesn't even get put into the calculation when we talk about emissions. And so, if we have an animal that can literally offset itself as it produces the most nutrient dense food on the planet, the logic of it starts to make a ton of sense in terms of the sustainability and the sustainable aspect of what it means to consume red meat. Now, again, we need to caution that overconsumption is not the goal. Just because the animal can offset itself doesn't mean that we can just multiply that over and over and over again. Right. I think it's something like in Canada today, like 47% food waste rates. Right.
It's so sad.
Yeah. So, that is a big factor when it comes to sustainability is us, right? Taking personal ownership of your food, taking personal ownership in becoming a part of your food chain is something that I so passionately believe in. And I think people need to, really wake up and take some of that responsibility back into their own hands and not just point the finger at, well, red meat is bad, and so I'm going to go buy my Beyond Burger and think that I've saved the planet.